Tenant asking landlord, me, to be more professional. I am a small-time landlord, with just 4 tenants. Earlier this year, I had 2 sisters who didn't respond to my request to add the gal's husband to the lease, though he was living with them. Not a big deal. But did I mention the pit bull they also brought home, without permission? I do allow pets and had previously approved their other dog. I asked nicely in person and by email in the months leading up to the malicious compliance. They also did not respond when I asked if they were happy there, and wanted to renew their lease for the following year. I asked again. Then I emailed them notice that I would start showing the unit 2 days later. I try to be a nice landlord. I do. They had a newborn, as well, so I scheduled all of the showings within a 2-hour window on the same night so I could be in their space as little as possible. Also, because they had not responded, and it was now serious crunch time for getting another tenant and my spouse worked all the following 2 weeks during the evening showing hours, I had the delightful inconvenience of bringing my 2- and 6-year-old children with me to the showings. Because I'm not a corporation, I'm a small-time family landlord with kids. Try to imagine how difficult it is to conduct business meetings with 2 kids, right? Then imagine staggering showings every 15 minutes, with prospective tenants who are also bringing their kids. Just to further clutter your imagination, this is an 800 square foot 2-bedroom apartment with a cozy entryway. So I arrive with my 2 kids, to find that my tenants are still at home, along with the husband, the newborn, and the other sister's boyfriend. So that's 7 people in a small kitchen already. Then the first prospective tenants start arriving. Husbands, wives, kids, and some show up early so there are 2 sets of them. That's 14 people in a small kitchen. And I'm a mom. I have magical powers. So I'm holding my toddler, my daughter is safely under the dining table coloring, and I'm chatting with the prospective tenants and directing traffic while my actual tenants prepare to depart. If you didn't know this already, it's common practice in the US to leave the premises during real estate or apartment showings. This was their first apartment, so I emailed them ahead of time to let them know what is generally expected at showings, for example a relatively tidy apartment, and that they can leave, for their convenience. They do eventually leave, after the boyfriend tells a prospective tenant that he, in fact, also lives there. And I carry on with an exhausting scheduling of showings. And have my new tenants all picked out and a lease signed by the next day. Awesome, right? The next night, I got a voicemail from the husband, who is not my tenant. I saved it and just listened to it again because it still gives me that same delightful shiver of malicious compliance. In his voicemail, he told me how awful it was that my children touched his infant's things. They didn't, because I keep my kids entertained with magical mommy toys, but prospective tenants also brought children, and how they had to sterilize everything to keep their infant from being sick, and how inconvenient it was to have showings with only 2 days' notice, and how very unprofessional I was to bring my children and asked if I could just be more professional in the future. You can hear it, can't you? A deep shiver of malicious compliance vibrated through my offended being. The next morning, I started issuing professional lease violation notices. 1 for the extra residents of the unit, hubby and boyfriend. 1 for the extra dog. And a few additional ones for building concerns I noted during the showings. They ignored the violation notice, which I sent by certified mail and, thoughtfully, also by email. I decided to be even more professional 30 days later and issue a 5-day notice to vacate. I called their mom, who was their emergency contact, as an eviction notice is an emergency. Did I mention that their lease was due to end just a few weeks later? But it would be unprofessional of me to let these violations slide until then. 3 days later, they'd magically sent me all the information I'd requested, removed the other dog, licensed the first dog, and gotten the required pet insurance. They moved out on their lease termination date. And skipped out on their last electric bill, and left the unit in damaged condition. Despite my professional security deposit disposition statement and payment request, they ignored those notices, until I stated I would proceed to small claims court by X date for the total due beyond their security deposit. On X date, they replied stating they didn't think it was fair that they should have to cover damages to the unit, or pay any more money toward their utility bill. Yep. 2 months later, there we were in the lobby of the courthouse, sitting across from each other on uncomfortable waiting room benches. They're laughing among themselves about how they're going to get their full security deposit back. And I'm quietly reviewing my presentation notes to the judge and my sizable stack of evidence, photographs, videos. This was my first time in court, but I wasn't laughing. I was preparing. 1 hour later, we're back in the lobby and their mom is trying to write me a check for the full amount of the judgment. She doesn't have a pen. Her kids don't have a pen. I, however, have a pen. I cheerfully offer my pen. She writes the check and hands it to me, and... Wait. I hold out my hand again. Got my pen back too. I was so proud of myself for not saying any of the sassy things in my head at that moment. Do you know why? Because I was being professional, as I'd been from the moment he'd left that voicemail. As a last note, I do acknowledge that it would have been better if I hadn't brought my children. However, if you have kids, you'll understand that sometimes, they simply have to go where you go. My boss stole my Super Bowl tickets, so I made him lose a major client. Part 1. I'm a huge 49ers fan, the rabbit all-day tailgate in the parking lot type. A few years ago, we made it back to the Super Bowl. I was working at a consulting firm with a handful of accounts I would interact with directly. One client in particular knew how big of a Niners fan I was. I was the day-to-day lead on his account. He liked working with me and we became friends, often grabbing drinks or dinner after our meetings. He had access to a pair of extra company seats to the game, and as a thank you, wanted to give them to me as a gift. He passed the tickets over to the partner on that account, who I will refer to as scumbag partner, to be given to me as a surprise. The game came and went, we lost, it sucked. The next time we met, we went to drinks afterward and he mentioned, "Hey, by the way, why didn't you go to the game? I heard someone else was in your seats." I asked, "What game?" He said the Super Bowl. Confused, I answered, "I didn't have seats in the Super Bowl?" He told me that he gave scumbag partner a pair of his company tickets for me as a gift so I could attend. I had zero idea what he was talking about. He looked shocked and told me to quietly ask around about it and get back to him. When I was back in the office the next week, I found out through one of the secretaries that scumbag partner had given a pair of Super Bowl tickets to another one of his clients as a gift from our company. I might have let this sort of thing go to keep the peace under different circumstances, but these were seats on the 30-yard line to see the 49ers play in the Super Bowl. I was pissed. I considered confronting scumbag partner myself but realized it was the client who had noticed I wasn't there in the first place, so if I let him handle it, there would be no blowback on me. So I texted him, "Hey, I just wanted to thank you so much for thinking of me with those seats. It appears that they were given to another one of our firm's clients." He texted back right away, in all caps, "Are you shitting me? And then pretend I never told you, let me handle it." He followed up with me about formulating a plan. A few days later, we were asked to come down for a meeting in their office. The client requested the partner be present, not entirely unusual, so scumbag partner and I hopped on a flight the next week and headed over to their office. Little did scumbag partner know, my client had orchestrated a wonderfully awkward little show to catch him red-handed. When we entered the conference room, it was all the usual suspects along with a woman in her 30s we didn't recognize. My client immediately introduced scumbag partner, "This is Stephanie such and such, VP from other departments, and she wanted to sit in on this meeting. Hey, op, you guys must already know her from the Super Bowl." She then responds as she goes to shake my hand, "Oh, I don't think so. Did we meet there? I'm sorry if I forgot." The client responds, "Geez Steph, how much did you have to drink? They were sitting right next to you. My boss stole my Super Bowl tickets, so I made him lose a major client." Part 2. The client looks at me, and I say, "Sorry, client, I wasn't there. Are you thinking of someone else?" At this point, scumbag partner is looking visibly uncomfortable, probably trying to come up with an excuse. He starts in with When Stephanie says over him, "No, so-and-so, from other company, were in the other seats. By the way, I was wondering why we gave company seats to those guys. Is there a project we're working with them on that I don't know about?" Obviously not, they were in completely different industries. It would be like Coca-Cola partnering with John Deere. Scumbag partner lets out an again, and the client immediately speaks over him asking, "Scumbag partner, I gave you those tickets for, op?" At this point, scumbag partner is turning bright red. He responds, well he wasn't able to make it, so he must have given the seats away to someone else?" And turns to me looking for me to cover for him. The client smirks at me. I respond, "What are you talking about? Client, you gave me tickets to the Super Bowl?" The client suddenly raises his voice, "Scumbag partner, those tickets were a personal thank you gift from me too, op. Did you give them away to someone else?" Pause, was it another client? Scumbag partner butts in with, maybe something got mixed up in the office?" The client went quiet for what probably seemed like an eternity to scumbag partner. He then looked down, grabbed his portfolio and iPad, put them into his briefcase, and said, "I think this meeting is over. Op, it seems as if I owe you a thank you gift, let's go to lunch. Stephanie, you're welcome to join, scumbag partner, I need to evaluate our relationship, please go back home and expect to hear from us next week." Scumbag partner suggests he would like to join, presumably to do damage control, and Stephanie sternly tells him I don't think that's a good idea. And asks the front desk to see scumbag partner out. As soon as he is in the elevator, we all break out laughing hysterically. Stephanie wasn't a VP, just an employee at the company whom the client had drafted into helping with his pre-planned meeting skit, but she did end up coming to lunch with us and was a fellow Niners fan and a total blast to hang out with. On our way to the restaurant, I got a desperate text from scumbag partner saying I needed to cover for the firm and that we could discuss things when I got back. I replied, "Yes, we need to talk, but I'll see what I can do." The client told me to wait a couple of hours and then respond to him. 1. To expect invoices for the resale value of the Super Bowl tickets. Resale is way above face value. It was over $10,000, as well as our lunch. He picked a pricey spot and made a big show of overspending, and that he expected them to be paid immediately. 2. Expected I be given a direct apology. 3. Expected a written apology to his company for what he considered theft. And 4. He will only interact with me or another one of our firm's partners, never scumbag partner. This whole thing caused a stir with the other partners, and I came off looking great because it appeared that I had made a good faith effort to save the client for the firm despite being the victim in the situation. The client would transfer to another partner, which meant scumbag partner lost his profit share on any work with them. Oh, and the other partners in the firm made scumbag partner pay the invoices back out of his salary. In retrospect, I have no idea what the hell the guy was thinking. Did he seriously believe the client would just not notice me not thanking him for Super Bowl tickets? Anyway, the well was kind of poisoned for me there long term because scumbag partner wasn't going anywhere. I left the firm a few months later for a much better position. Client ultimately terminated their relationship with that firm a year later. He now works with a good friend of mine at a competing firm. I'm still pissed I missed out on the Super Bowl even though we lost, hoping we make it back this year so I can finally go to one in person. Go Niners!